In a bustling San Francisco library on the 1st of October 2013, a young man sits hunched over his laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. To the casual observer, he appears to be just another student working on a project. But in that moment, FBI agents are closing in, knowing that the device in front of him contains what prosecutors would later call one of the most comprehensive digital confessions in criminal history. The laptop belonged to Ross Ulbricht, and hidden within its encrypted files lay a detailed diary documenting the creation and operation of the Silk Road, the internet's most notorious darknet marketplace. What makes this case extraordinary isn't just the scale of the criminal enterprise, but how extensively Ulbricht documented many aspects of his illegal activities, creating a substantial digital trail that would prove central to his conviction. Welcome to Vanishing Threads. Today, we're examining how a brilliant programmer's obsession with documenting his work became the very evidence that brought down his criminal empire. Ross William Ulbricht seemed an unlikely candidate for criminal mastermind. Born in 1984 in Austin, Texas, he was raised in a middle-class family that valued education and intellectual achievement. His academic record was stellar, a physics degree from the University of Texas, followed by further academic pursuits. Those who knew him described a thoughtful, idealistic young man interested in libertarian philosophy and economic theory. But it was this very intellectualism that would prove both his greatest strength and ultimate weakness. Ulbricht wasn't content simply to create a marketplace. He felt compelled to philosophize about it, to justify it, and crucially, to document every step of its development. The story begins in 2010, when Ulbricht started keeping what would become his most damaging piece of evidence, a detailed digital journal. Writing under various pseudonyms, he chronicled his journey from economic theorist to darknet entrepreneur. The journal entries, later seized by the FBI, read like a mixture of criminal manifesto and business diary. In early entries, Ulbricht wrote about his growing disillusionment with traditional economic systems and his belief that free markets, unburdened by government regulation, could solve society's problems. He described his vision for an anonymous marketplace where people could trade anything without interference, a digital embodiment of Austrian economic principles taken to their logical, illegal conclusion. The technical challenge fascinated him. Creating a marketplace on the darknet required sophisticated knowledge of encryption, digital currencies, and anonymity networks. Ulbricht spent months learning the intricacies of Tor, the anonymity network that would host his creation, and Bitcoin, the digital currency that would facilitate transactions. His journal entries from this period reveal a man who genuinely believed he was creating something revolutionary. He wrote extensively about the philosophical implications of his work, viewing himself as a pioneer of digital freedom rather than a criminal facilitator. This self-image would persist throughout the site's operation, even as the reality of what he was enabling became increasingly clear. The Silk Road launched in February 2011, initially offering a small selection of illegal drugs. But Ulbricht's journal reveals that from the very beginning, he understood the legal implications of what he was doing. In one entry, he wrote about the need to be extremely careful and acknowledged that he was risking his life and freedom for his ideals. What's particularly striking about the seized evidence is how methodical Ulbricht was in documenting every aspect of the operation. His laptop contained detailed financial records showing the site's growing profitability. Commission fees from drug transactions flowed into his Bitcoin wallets, and he tracked every payment with the precision of a corporate accountant. The FBI's forensic analysis revealed spreadsheets calculating the site's revenue and expenses. Court records show that by the time of Ulbricht's arrest, the Silk Road had processed over 9.5 million Bitcoin in total sales and approximately 600,000 Bitcoin in commissions, equivalent to roughly $1.2 billion in sales and 80 million in commissions using concurrent Bitcoin exchange rates. But perhaps most damaging were his communications with site administrators and users. The seized laptop contained thousands of chat logs showing Ulbricht operating under the pseudonym Dread Pirate Roberts, managing every aspect of the site's operations. These conversations revealed not just his direct involvement, but his evolution from idealistic programmer to hardened criminal administrator. The chat logs show Ulbricht dealing with disputes between buyers and sellers, managing the site's technical infrastructure, and making increasingly serious decisions to protect his operation. According to FBI affidavits, some conversations included discussions about commissioning violence against users who threatened to expose the site, allegations that would later form the basis for additional charges against him, though no actual murders were proven in connection with these solicitations. What makes these communications particularly compelling as evidence is their authentic voice. Unlike carefully crafted public statements, these private messages reveal Ulbricht's genuine thoughts and decision-making process. They show a man who began with idealistic motivations, but gradually became consumed by the practical demands of running a criminal enterprise. The technical evidence was equally comprehensive. FBI computer forensics specialists found that Ulbricht's laptop contained the administrative tools for managing the Silk Road, including access to the site's Bitcoin wallets and user databases. The computer's activity logs showed him actively administering the site right up until the moment of his arrest. Most remarkably, investigators found that when Ulbricht was arrested, agents were able to seize his laptop before he could close or encrypt it. According to court testimony, the computer was displaying Silk Road administrative interfaces, though the exact details of what was visible on screen are less comprehensively documented in public records. The arrest itself reveals how thoroughly digital evidence had replaced traditional investigative methods. Rather than relying on informants or undercover operations, investigators built their case through careful analysis of digital footprints. They traced Bitcoin transactions, analyzed posting patterns, and connected seemingly anonymous online identities to real-world individuals. The breakthrough came through a combination of digital detective work and human error. Investigators noticed that early posts promoting the Silk Road had been made by a user named Altoid on various forums. This same username had been used in a programming forum where someone asked about Tor development and accidentally included their real email address, an address registered to Ross Ulbricht. This single mistake, preserved forever in internet archives, provided the crucial link between the anonymous Dread Pirate Roberts persona and the real person behind it. It demonstrates how even the most sophisticated anonymity measures can be undone by a moment's carelessness, especially when that carelessness is preserved in digital records. The trial that followed was largely a showcase for digital forensics. Prosecutors built their case primarily on the seized digital evidence, journal entries, chat logs, and financial records that painted a comprehensive picture of criminal enterprise. Defense attorneys argued that Ulbricht had been framed, suggesting that someone else could have planted the evidence on his laptop, or that another person had taken over the site's operations. But the volume and consistency of the digital evidence, combined with blockchain analysis linking transactions to wallets found on his laptop, made these arguments difficult to sustain. The case highlighted a fundamental shift in how crimes are investigated and prosecuted in the digital age. Rather than relying on traditional evidence like witness testimony or physical surveillance, the conviction rested on digital forensics and Ulbricht's own preserved writings and communications. The broader implications extend beyond this single case. The Silk Road investigation demonstrated how digital forensics could penetrate even sophisticated anonymity measures. It showed that digital criminals, no matter how technically proficient, often leave trails that can be followed by determined investigators with sufficient resources. But the case also raises questions about digital privacy and the permanence of online actions. Every message sent, every file created, every transaction recorded, potentially becomes evidence in ways that previous generations of criminals never had to consider. The digital age has created unprecedented opportunities for both crime and law enforcement. The human element remains equally fascinating. Ross Ulbricht wasn't caught because of superior surveillance technology or infiltration by undercover agents. He was caught because he couldn't resist documenting his work, because he needed to intellectualize and justify his actions, and because he made the very human mistake of using the same username across different platforms. His journal entries reveal someone who genuinely believed in his cause but gradually lost sight of its human costs. The abstract philosophical principles that motivated him remained constant, but their practical application led to consequences he seemed unable to fully acknowledge. The disconnect between his self-perception as a freedom fighter and the reality of facilitating drug distribution created a cognitive dissonance that permeates his writings. The Silk Road case has become a cautionary tale for the digital age, not just about the risks of criminal enterprise, but about the permanence of digital records. In an era where every keystroke can be preserved and analyzed, the traditional boundaries between public and private, permanent and temporary, have fundamentally shifted. For law enforcement, the case provided a template for investigating digital crimes. The techniques developed for the Silk Road investigation have since been applied to other darknet marketplaces, always with the understanding that digital criminals often provide their own evidence through their compulsive documentation habits. Ross Ulbricht's story is ultimately one of how intellectual brilliance can coexist with profound misjudgment. His technical skills were undeniable, his philosophical motivations were genuinely held, and his documentation was methodologically rigorous. But these very strengths became the instruments of his downfall. The laptop seized in that San Francisco library contained more than just evidence of criminal activity. It contained a complete intellectual and emotional journey from idealistic programmer to convicted criminal. In trying to document his revolution, Ulbricht had instead documented his own destruction. Today, Ross Ulbricht is serving 2 life terms plus 40 years without parole, and his detailed digital records remain one of the most comprehensive examples of how someone's own documentation can become central evidence in their criminal prosecution. The Silk Road may have been shut down, but the digital evidence of its operation continues to provide insights into both the possibilities and perils of our increasingly digital world. The case serves as a reminder that in the digital age, we are all creating permanent records of our thoughts, actions, and intentions. The question is not whether these records exist, but who will ultimately have access to them and how they will be used to judge us. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, stay curious, stay safe.